stage 14 for Scotland.
McRae came away unscathed.
Tarmac stage in Wales is incredible. Down to here, second gear, lots of kind of grip changes throughout it. Turn it up here, slide it through here, set up, slide out of that on there, get a good run down here through this gate post here. We've got a little jump coming up here, turn straight into that left hand there, into the sort of quarry section, just a little dab here, get it settled down. Third gear through here, dab on the brake, back the other way, and then run it all the way out through down here again. Bumpy into here, so you want to brake just a little bit early, I have been anyway. Second gear, use the anti-lag all the way up here, short shift again, get turned in, and then this is tight in here, second gear, tight on the exit, but again, you want a good run all the way up here, big green down the middle, just be careful, particularly under braking here, because this then tightens all the way through here, down to second. Slippery on the exit because you've got the mud you can see here, so just be careful up through here, obviously, and then again firing up here, up through the gears, you can kind of short shift, live on the torque, back down to fourth through here, and then just third through here, again through the gateway there. Oh dear God. Up over this crest, it's quite scary, and then here, the off-camber downhill section, look at that view out there, it's amazing. Again over this crest, big downhill braking zone to here, feel the anti-lag. You want to be turning left over this crest here, another braking zone down to here. This one, don't get off line into here, otherwise it gets pretty squirrely, and then line it up, bit of a slide on the exit, steeply back downhill here. This corner's quite scary as well, just going to balance it. And then it's tighter all the way on the run into here. The thing that I love about these wild cars, they feel so special because they're just so alive. The steering is incredible. The agility is unbelievable. And you can drive them, you know, when you get used to the tyres, you work out how much grip you've got. It's such an amazing feeling. The precision on a tight, narrow little bit of road like this. I mean, you might only have 300 brake horsepower, but boy, does it feel quick here.
This is a first-generation Ford Focus WRC. The inspiration behind more of the first Focus RS road car than you might think, and also one of my favourite rally cars ever. Mostly because it makes me think of a famous piece of onboard footage. No, not this one. If this film makes you feel active in the diff department, then do please think about joining the Hagerty Drivers Club. You get an award-winning magazine and myriad other benefits. To find out more, just click on the link below. In 1997, the old Group A rules for rally cars were superseded by a new set of World Rally Car regulations. But not everyone was very swift on the uptake. Indeed, many of the early WRC cars were simply modified Group A cars, and the Escort RS Cosworth was one such adaptation. The WRC version of the Cosy got much better McPherson strut rear suspension, but it was always a stopgap. Something totally new and fresh was needed, and that car arrived in 1999. The development of the Focus WRC car is pretty amazing, really. It was developed in just 7 months in 1998, and it wasn't developed up in Cumbria, where M Sport is based now in Dovenby Hall. Instead, it was developed in what was cheekily referred to as M Sport South, or Millbrook, down in Bedfordshire. It was a team of just 10 people that developed the car, and they were headed up by somebody that you probably know from Netflix and Drive to Survive, and phone conversations that start, "Hello, Gene." Yes. Gunther Steiner was the man responsible for developing this car.
Yeah, it's a very exciting day for us, for all M Sport, for all the people which worked on this project. First time to the press. I mean, the car is running since months. We know that it's working, but it's very nice to see it in front of everybody, and it's a great moment.
Long before he was an accidental streaming star as principal of the often hapless Haas F1 team, Steiner was a rally man, starting at Mazda, working for the Jolly Club and then ProDrive before joining M Sport. He had a very good starting point for the Focus WRC project as well, because although the WRC rules were very different to Group A, there were still elements that had to be taken from the road cars. And the standard Ford Focus was a brilliant bit of kit, with its control blade rear suspension. The 2-litre turbocharged engines also had to be road car based, and were initially built by Mountune before Cosworth took over.
The figures for this, about 300 brake horsepower, maybe a little bit more, 400 pounds-feet of torque, and the weight was about 12-13 kilos. Actually, the Focus was a little bit heavy when it first came out, but it got lighter over the years, and by the time they got to 2001, it was on the money. It was a very stiff, strong shell, which is perhaps the reason that this car did so well in the hands of Colin McRae at the Safari Rally. In 1999, just 3 rallies in, that was the first victory for the Focus WRC. Oh wow!
After a minor snafu around the placement of a water pump in Monte Carlo, the Focus was off to a flyer, and McRae won the next round in Portugal too. Ford's investment seemed to be paying off, and it wasn't just the car that they had opened the checkbook very wide for.
Because that was one of the things about this first Focus World Rally car, one of the big talking points. $3 million a year for Colin McRae, unheard of at the time.
There was a great interview with Colin in issue 8 of Evo magazine, conducted on the eve of the Portuguese rally in 1999 by the inimitable Russell Bulgin. He asked, "So which of your rivals was the first to comment about the money, and what did he say?" "Carlos," answered Colin. "He's as tight as a duck's arse," said with a big smile. He couldn't believe it. As soon as I gave him the confirmation, I think he was on the phone to Malcolm, seeing if there was another seat. As I say, that was in 1999, and guess who joined the team in 2000? After a fantastic start in 99, a string of retirements had meant just 2 solitary points for the Ford team in the second half of the season. But in 2000, Carlos Sainz hit the ground running, coming second in Monte Carlo. A feat repeated the following year in this car, V10 FMC, that's now owned by Girardo Co.
One of the big differences for the tarmac setup is that we've got larger brakes here, so 380mm as opposed to 300mm discs on the front from Brembo. Bigger wheels obviously as well. Just balance it through there. Wow, I love this car. Just amazing.
These first generation Focuses had active diffs at the front and in the centre, with mechanical diffs at the rear. The slightly later, fully active cars feel even more agile, but I've always rather liked this blend.
Perhaps the most iconic thing about this car actually is this little lever here. Because when it came out, we were sort of at the start of paddle shifts. Subaru was the first really to go with a paddle shift. Prior to that, it had all been H patterns or sequentials. But Ford decided to go with this. And it's such a distinctive little gear shift. In the very early cars, in fact, this whole lever sort of moved up here. But then later on, we ended up with this, which is just a little switch. It can almost be off a sort of PlayStation rig or something like that. And it's all at once wonderfully mechanical, but also very digital. It's actually very satisfying to use. The gearbox that is operating is an X-Track 6-speed box, mounted longitudinally. No need to use the clutch at all once you're up and running in this, so it's just left foot brake and just pull it back for a gear. Clip the bracket in there, then brake hard, back down. It's so easy. It's such a big mechanical kind of clunk. Love it through there. So flowing. Oh. The only thing is, I feel a little bit lonely in here.
There are, of course, always two people in a rally car. In the case of this car, it was Lewis Moya, Carlos Sainz's co-driver. Now, I always think of him as sort of angry and irritated and annoyed because my prevailing image of him is throwing his helmet through the rear window of a Toyota Corolla in Margam Park in 1998 when their car expired just 300 yards agonisingly from the finish line. However, Colin McRae says that Lewis Moya was actually a lot of fun and good for an evening out. One such evening out occurred in Greece one year, and they took a recce car, went off to a bar. They didn't have anything to do the following day, and they came out of this bar, back in the car, not a lot of fuel. Colin sets off, gets to a railway line, says, I know a shortcut, turns 90 right onto the railway line, wheels either side of the tracks, and they go howling along there, howling with laughter, hands off the wheel for about 3 or 4 kilometres until they come to the off exit. Colin did apparently wonder what would happen if a train came the other way, but it didn't. So there we go. Lewis Moya, good for a fun evening out. Moya and Sainz used this exact car on 3 rallies in total, the first one of which was San Remo in 2000. They finished 5th, 1 place ahead of McRae and Grist in the last of the point scoring positions. However, McRae said that was the sweetest point he ever scored in the WRC. Why? Because this had happened in Corsica just 3 weeks earlier. Trapped in the car, drifting in and out of consciousness with the taste of blood, the smell of fuel and the fear of fire, it was an agonising 45 minutes before McRae was rescued, and then only thanks to the superhuman efforts of Nicky Grist and Bernie Shrewsbury. It was the biggest accident of McRae's rallying career. His chest, back and shoulders all took a beating, but it was his face that was worst. He had a cheekbone that looked like a packet of cornflakes when they x-rayed it and required major surgery along with his eye socket. But to the amazement of everyone, he was somehow back competing in the very next round of the championship just 10 days after that operation. What's even more remarkable is that Colin didn't just do the rally in San Remo, he did a load of press beforehand, because it was the launch of this car, the first Focus RS. Still visibly battered and bruised, McRae drove up and down through hairpins demonstrating the car. And we thought it would be fun to bring road and rally back together again. What's so striking about having these two cars together, rally and road, is just how similar they are. Don't forget, this wasn't Group A, this was the WRC era, so you were allowed to make more changes over the road car, but, well, yeah, this still looks so clean, so pure, so like the road car, and that's not a coincidence, because when they looked at the standard Focus, they realised that it was fantastically aerodynamic, with a drag coefficient of just 0.36, and it worked really well at high speed. Add in some arches for the RS, and hey presto, it's kind of basically a facsimile. Just over 4,500 Mk1 Focus RSs were built, but this is rather special, because this is car number 0001. As well as the overall looks being very similar, there are also all sorts of details that linked this to the World Rally car, most notably in the brand names. So obviously we've got the Sparco seats here, just like in the rally car, and there are Sparco pedals down there as well, in fact. Sparco handbrake as well, and a green starter button, just like in the rally car. The OZ Racing wheels, wonderful facsimiles of the tarmac rally cars. The Brembo brakes behind there as well, another little cue that just makes you think of the road and rally relationship. One that you can't really see,
but is there is the turbocharger. Garrett on both. To be honest, I hadn't expected there to be any similarities at all, really, between this and the rally car in terms of the driving experience. But the suspension, the way that this rides, this is obviously on passive dampers and it's pretty firm at low speeds, definitely gets a lot better as you pick speed up. But just the way that it rolls and the primary ride, there is definitely a similarity in there. It's almost spooky. Of course, the performance of this isn't anywhere near the World Rally Car. It put out 212 brake horsepower, 229 pounds-feet of torque. The weight was actually relatively similar, at 1278 kilos for a curb weight, so pretty close to the rally car. That power figure, though, did make it the most powerful front-wheel drive hot hatch of the time.
To try to tame all of that, the RS had a Quaife limited slip diff, which worked well on smooth roads, but as soon as things got rougher, it could get more unruly than a bouncy castle in a pub garden.
You come into a bumpier corner, and the limited slip diff could mean that it was a bit like having a sort of boisterous squirrel in each hand trying to escape. A 0 to 60 time of just under 6 seconds is obviously some way behind the rally car, and it doesn't have the hyper-agile steering either, despite the fact this has got the quickest rack that had been fitted to any Ford road car at the time. One of the things that McRae actually said on that San Remo test, because obviously he was never just going to be a PR mouthpiece for Ford, even when he was being paid all that money, was that he wanted to have a slightly shorter final drive. And that does make sense, even away from the tight hairpins of San Remo, because you really do have to stay on top of the gears to make sure you're in the boost. However, this has a 5-speed as opposed to the rally car's 6-speed, and I think a shorter final drive and just a 5th for top would have been not great on motorways.
There is another connection between the road and rally Focuses too, a human link, and it's the reason we've shunned the South Wales roads around the famous Wales Rally GB stages that the Focus WRC competed on, and have instead come to North Wales.
These wild roads are the roads where the Ford Focus was honed, improved, finessed. These are the roads of a local man, born in Bangor, a rally man who grew up going to the RAC rally. These are the roads of Richard Parry Jones.
RPJ was an engineer who joined Ford in 1969 at the age of 18 and was revered for reinvigorating the way Fords drove in the 90s, culminating with the brilliant Focus that made the whole industry pull its dynamic socks up. He rose to become Chief Technical Officer, the man in charge of global R&D for the Blue Oval. But he was inspired to do all this when, as a boy, he saw the RAC rally pass near his home in Wales, and he remained a true bobblehatter all his life.
He was good friends with Nicky Grist, and apparently used to ring up Malcolm Wilson on a fairly regular basis to chat through various engineering problems. Ironically, Richard Parry Jones wasn't actually that involved with the Focus RS by all accounts. The reason being that, well, he wanted to get the standard Focus absolutely right, so he didn't sort of just move on to doing the performance variants as perhaps he might have wanted. He did the ST170, which was a great car. Then, however, he moved to America. The reason being, ironically, that he was moved up the ladder and he oversaw both the rally team and the road car team. And he really wanted to make sure that they, well, integrated, helped each other out. Sadly, I never met Richard Parry Jones, but colleagues of mine who did say that a passenger ride with him was quite the experience. Legend has it that Richard Parry Jones would make his engineers drive on these roads in the fog. Why? Well, because he said when you were uncertain about the road ahead, that's really when you would feel a car and know if you had confidence in its innate characteristics. No fog? No problem. You just mask up the headlights at night. One of the other ironies of Richard Parry Jones being promoted and having greater involvement during his workday with the World Rally Team was that when it came to Wales Rally GB, he couldn't actually spectate the way he wanted to. No longer was it a case of driving out to the stages with his brother. Instead, he had to take the helicopter.
I really like the fact that although the synergy between road and rally wasn't as overt as in the Group A era, Richard Parry Jones fought to keep the connections going. I just wish that the road car had gone the whole hog and been four-wheel drive, like this.
I love the fact that when you get out of the RS road car and back into this, you can still see so many road car cues in here. The slashes and angles on the dash, particularly, obviously the door handle here. And that was something very particular to this kind of era of WRC car, because after this we got into the Christian Loriot era of design, where he tended to centralise everything low down, so kind of stripped out the interiors even more. And they lost a lot of their kind of recognisable characteristics. Through here, just slide it out of there and then turn it early, slide it through there. I love that bit. Strangely, if somebody says to me, Colin McRae on board, I don't think of a blue and yellow Subaru. I think of one of these. That fabulous bit of footage through St Gwynno in 2001. Nicky Grist calling the notes, the 6 lefts and 6 rights at the start before brakes hard, flings it sideways through a corner with huge numbers of logs all on the inside. It is breathtaking. The sound of the stones clattering in the arches as he goes from ditch to ditch. Unbelievable.
6 right into 6 left opens, 50, 6 left, 120. 6 left over crest opens and left tightens to 4+ line. And 6 right minus, 30. 4 left, 30, turn open, hairpin left, don't cut.
I know I'm not the only one to love that footage. It's tinged with the sad knowledge that McRae and Grist's rally would end in a crash on the very next stage, leaving the car and their championship hopes in a twisted mess. But in St Gwynno, fully committed, with precise armfuls of lock, stubby lever commanding the gears, that title is still tantalisingly possible. And it's why I adore this car.